I think he was so surprised that he thought Romney was just sort of flat out lying. And, that he never proposed a 20% tax cut. When, we've been hearing that a lot. And I think that sort of threw him off his game.
That's David Gergen, hardly a bleeding heart there, wondering if perhaps the president, thrown off by Romney, as he put it, lying last night, or to put it another way.
The man on stage last night, he does not want to be held accountable for the real Mitt Romney's decisions and what he's been saying for the last year. And that's because he knows full well that we don't want what he's been selling for the last year. So Governor Romney may dance around his positions, but if you want to be president, you owe the American people the truth.
President a lot more animated there today on the stump here than he was last night, you could argue, in Denver. But a lot of people calling out fact and fiction last night. In fact, both candidates saying, hey, the other one was a little full of it. So we did a little fact checking today. Mitt Romney being dinged for telling more than his fair share of, they say, Whoppers last night. Andrew, it's a long list here. Let's do the highlights.
Yeah, and we could do this for the entire hour, but we've got other things to talk about. So let's jump in with Romney last night on taxes for the top 1%.
I will not reduce the share paid by high-income individuals. I know that you and your running mate keep saying that, and I know it's a popular thing to say with a lot of people, but it's just not the case.
And joining us now to fact-check Mitt Romney on that statement is Mitt Romney from a Republican debate back in February.
I said today that we're going to cut taxes on everyone across the country by 20%, including the top 1%. So that's number one.
Thank you, Mitt. Now more on taxes from Governor Romney last night.
I'm not looking for a $5 trillion tax cut. What I've said is I won't put in place a tax cut that adds to the deficit. I will not, under any circumstances, raise taxes on middle-income families.
Only the numbers don't quite add up in a way to make that possible, as the nonpartisan tax policy research, the Tax Policy Center put in a report, quote, he's promised all these things and he can't do them all. In order for him to cover the cost of his tax cut without adding to the deficit, he'd have to find a way to raise taxes on middle-income people or people making less than $200,000 a year. Romney's tax position is based on the notion that cutting taxes will spark the economy and add growth, and the government will then take in more tax dollars even at a lower rate, something that is highly disputed. All right, up next, health care.
I just as soon not have the government telling me what kind of health care I get. I'd rather be able to have an insurance company. If I don't like them, I can get rid of them and find a different insurance company.
This, a rehash version of the death panel's accusation, also debunked some time ago. Along with that, Romney also claiming that Obamacare would raise costs. It provides tax credit to reduce costs. He claimed 20 million people will lose health insurance, even though Obamacare extended coverage to 30 million people. He said his plan would cover pre-existing conditions, except it would not for people who are uninsured and much more. And finally, there are the fibs that we don't have time to correct. They include on energy policy, business taxes, debt levels, offshore jobs and taxes, Medicaid and Medicare, Wall Street regulation, green energy, and military cuts, all being checked under the false category for Romney today. To be fair, President Obama also being fisked by the fact checkers today for overestimating some numbers and creative government accounting. But nothing, I would say, on the scale of Romney's scope or claims, Rich.
All right, we'll get into it. Well, with Jessica, we'll get into whether or not. I'll let you. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to shut up. And John, you and Joe get into this one about the facts. As a CPA, math is your life here. And Joe, certainly, you've done very well for yourself in the business world. Talk about the tax rates, because you could see the double take on the president when he said, hey, wait, I'm not raising taxes on the middle class, and I don't know where you're getting this number from. They're going to be lowering taxes on the top 1% to 20%. Andrew played the clip. Everybody, as soon as the debate ended, said, where is this coming from? Well, go ahead, guys.
Well, look, I think we need to fact check Andrew. First and foremost, the president talked about $4 trillion in his cuts, and every fact checker says absolutely untrue. $2 trillion are already in place. $800 billion is from war savings. So, and then and in fact his budget was rejected. Wait, what was it? 99-0 in the Senate. Oh wait, 435-0 in the House. And well, I can't believe that, quite frankly, that you missed all of his misrepresentations last night, mistruth.
The biggest contention today were over the tax cuts, or now the non-tax cuts, as are related to Mitt Romney.
Let's talk about the $5 trillion. The $5 trillion is the Tax Policy Center. What you think is objective, I think is wholly unfair. What the Tax Policy Center did in 2016, they said there's a $460 billion deficit because of the lower rates, and the lower rates are absolutely correct. But what they're going to do, you have to understand, is the tax code is very narrow. Our income tax is $1.2 trillion. There's $1 trillion in tax loopholes, tax expenditures. So we're going to, what Romney intends to do, as does Ryan, recoup or recapture and close those tax loopholes to pay for the 20% reduction.
No single, and I'll bring in on this. Does any accountant really believe there's enough deductions, that there's enough loopholes to close here, that you're going to make up that number?
I'm sorry, Richard, the numbers are right here.
You know, I ran some numbers today on an individual making, and I did it in a simple way, $1.1 million a year in taxable income with $100,000 of deductions. So just keeping it simple, $1 million of taxable income, 35% is $350,000. That same person making $1,100,000 now only gets $20,000 of deductions because of the removal of deductions and loopholes. That person now at 25% is going to pay $250,000. To me, that's $100,000 savings for someone that's making over $1 million. And what type of savings or tax savings does a middle income earner make that's making $100,000 and now lost a majority of their tax deductions?
Just from a basic math standpoint, you guys, explain to me how, with the deficits we're running, you're going to increase spending in the military to a tune of $2 trillion over time, and you're going to be cutting tax rates by as much as 10% for the top income earners, also for the middle class, and you're going to somehow, with that shortfall of revenue, still balance your budget. How did the math add up?
I will tell you, Warren Feldstein has done the math, and he took the 2009 numbers, and so what you lose is $181 billion as a result of the 20% reduction. But what you recapture, if ultimately you close some of the tax loopholes and ultimately apply a different marginal rate, is $191 billion.
How do you know what the loopholes are when Mitt Romney hasn't even announced what they are?
So basically, what you have is a fertile field of $1 trillion in tax loopholes that you can recapture. And ultimately, what Feldstein proposes is you cap, for the most wealthy, the deductions they can keep. But there's clearly there's $1.1 trillion in tax expenditures. So if you close down the loopholes for $200-300 billion a year over 10 years, that's $3 billion right there.
But a lot of this is based on the idea that when you lower taxes, the economy will just grow like it's on steroids, to the point where even at a lower rate, the government's still going to take in more money, and that's been pretty well disproven over the last 30 years.
Obama has been perpetuating this myth that simply raising taxes on the 1% is going to solve our debt and deficit problem.
No. I don't
Which is
recall-
a
I don't
flat
recall-
out lie. He says it all the time. He said it last night.
Solves all the problems.
Yes, he has.
No, he
That
said
is
he
his
never
solution.
Wait, I understand. He's just demagoguing. It doesn't solve any real problem. He's just demagoguing.
It's a matter of fairness that he wants the increase in upper end taxes.
Fairness, 1% pay 37%, 50% pay nothing.
He's never made
Talk about fairness.
Guys, I can hear the TV sets clicking, but my only, because we're talking tax policy here, except.
Imagine how they were clicking last night.
Exactly. But my only thing I'm trying to get at is, we have heard a message for the better part of a year from Mitt Romney of what he's going to do. Last night he said, if it adds a single penny to the deficits, I won't cut anybody's taxes. I don't know if anybody paid attention to that, but if he's elected president and he can't get through Congress here the offsets he wants, he will not try and suggest to raise a single penny on taxes. And by the way, the Bush tax cuts are set to expire. So under Mitt Romney, if he can't find the offsets, the top end is going back to paying 39%.
Isn't this the same thing President Obama said with Obamacare? And the $716 billion he's taking out, he said there would be no impact on the deficits with Obamacare.
So you're saying never mind what he said last night?
No. What I'm saying is, just let's be clear. Another point that seems not to want to make is that President Obama admitted last night that we're taking $716 billion.
Which is the exact same number that Paul Ryan wanted to take out. If you look at his budget, I don't want to get the facts in there, but that's also his running mate a plan he wanted to adopt. I think you can't hear it, but they're playing the theme music. I got to go, and then we're going to keep this going. The debate continues after the break here, also known as break, and we're going to talk about a few other things about what happened to Jim Lehrer last night. Oy vey. All right, stay with us. We'll get into that after this.